Welcome to RFI's Banking Uncovered, the podcast going behind the industry PR, the media spin, the product awards, and the investor reports to look at what's really going on in the customer data, and to ask global thought leaders about their thoughts and views on the future of banking and payments.
Hi, Chloe James here for Banking Uncovered. I am really delighted to be welcoming Dave Birch, good pal of mine. Dave and I have been on numerous podcasts together. I think we've been on stage together. We've been lots at events together. I'm sure we've shared a glass of wine together.
Once or twice.
Welcome, Dave. Yeah, just once or twice. Welcome, Dave.
Lovely to be here, Chloe. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, no worries. So obviously you've had, well, you're always busy, but you've had a crazy busy time of late launching your new book. I believe you did it, Money 2020, in the Asia version of that in Thailand, which I'm excited to get on to later, Money in the Metaverse. But we're going to hit you with a couple of questions around, obviously, payments guru here, speaker, author, advisor. You do so much, Dave. Everybody knows who we're talking to. Marrying in the RFI data with some questions for you, really just around payments and that payment space. So I wanted to start with the money transfer apps, which we're seeing a lot more of and obviously really prevalent at the moment. Our data is showing that 75% of UK consumers are looking to switch their main bank compared to those who don't use any fintech at all. That's obviously a huge threat to the high street banks. We saw HSBC recently, not so recently, but launch Zing, and we're assuming that others are going to follow suit in that area. So I just wanted to kick you off with your thoughts on that, on the money transfer apps, and how you see banks really truly competing in that space.
Well, first of all, I think the UK is an odd example. Actually, I'm not sure we're a great example of all of this, because I'm sure your listeners will remember the history of this. In the UK, many years ago, we decided to launch not one but two money transfer services with all the banks. There was Ping It and PayM. It was never obvious to consumers that they were both the same thing sitting on top of the faster payment service. I don't think they were marketed terribly well. Neither of them gained any real traction. And actually, when they were turned off, but neither of them exist now. They've both been turned off. If you went down the street and asked consumers if they'd miss it, most of them would never even know what you were talking about. So the UK was not a very good example of this sort of thing. In the places where those apps have real traction, I mean, people tend to talk about Brazil, Pix, which is a very interesting example, the India UPI examples. I kind of think, certainly in the Australian, New Zealand market, the Scandinavian countries are probably a better model to look at. So you're talking about Swish in Sweden, MPay in Denmark, where you have incredible traction. Everybody uses them all the time. And they're now extending out into retail point of sale as well as kind of online services. And they're probably, I mean, I don't know how you guys see this, but I kind of see them, they're probably the vanguard of the next generation account to account stuff. So once you have the overlay service, if you like, that works properly and has strong authentication and fraud controls and all this kind of thing, you can kind of see there'll be a shift away from conventional networks to these more lower cost data rich networks. So I think things like Zing, I'm not sure if it's a great example. I think in many ways I tend to look to Scandinavia for those kind of things. Again, because I'm not, Brazil and India are great examples, but I mean, are they examples that teach anything to Australia or the UK? That's not clear to me,
I spoke last week on the podcast to Surrender Traplot, who's the global head of product at Wise. Obviously, TransferWise, and he was that's a great example. Christo Carmen's product, obviously hugely successful and has been around for a really long time now. So definitely good to point coming from those markets, maybe ones.
Wise,
do you think the big banks are going to create their own products to do that? That'll be
well, they did they? I mean, Wise is the perfect example because I was saying to somebody the other day, if you look at the raw, fintech hasn't disrupted anything really. I mean, come on, let's be honest about this. If you look at the raw, certainly in the UK, the proportion of deposits held by the four big banks have actually gone up since the first challenger banks were in. The fintech hasn't disrupted anything. I mean, fintech has been great, right? I mean, the Barclays app that I use on my phone is fantastic, and I use it all the time, and it works really well, and it does great things. And one of the reasons for that is a pressure from fintechs.
Yeah, they learn
You
from the best, right? Yeah.
know, right. So that's pressurized and forced change.
Mhm.
But actually, all of the products that my Barclays app uses are the same products I had 25 years ago. It's a
Yeah.
current account, it's a debit card, it's a credit. I mean, like, there's nothing new.
Yeah. But they just
The
look
one,
slick and they're easy to use. And I think they've just
yeah,
really
and that's great.
stripped out all
But
the complexity, and everything's, it's, there's only the four little bars at the top in, I use my Westpac app, for example,
yeah,
all the time. And it's very simple. It's like the keep it simple thing really works.
and that's been great, and that's really been good for consumers. But it's not. But none of the products you're using inside that are innovative.
Yeah.
You know, whereas my Wise multi-currency account, which I use all the time,
Yeah.
was truly innovative.
Yeah.
You know, and a generation later, my bank still can't offer me that same. They can't offer me a multi-currency account like that.
Yeah. That's
And I use Wise all the time. So it's interesting to reflect on what was really innovative and what wasn't. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So can banks copy Wise?
Mm.
Uh, that's not obvious to me because they would have done that already if it was a viable thing.
Yeah.
Can they find more effective ways to partner with Wise? Probably they can, and lots of them do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But strategically, looking to sort of the next generation and the next wave of disruption, maybe it's better just to leave that to Wise and move on to something else.
Yeah. And just integrate that product maybe into your own offering. I mean, people are going to be using it. I want to talk about innovation just because we've just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
gone there in the conversation. Bringing out some more stats here. This time around, SMEs, obviously they have a really big appetite for digital. That sort of goes without saying. Our research is showing at the moment that 3 in 5 are not satisfied with the innovation from their provider. And unlike consumers, they vote with their feet. They walk, right? Their switching intentions are huge. The number one frustration or need, if you like, is the ability to make payments from anyone to anywhere. That's what people are really annoyed about in that SME space. With that in mind, what do you think banks or fintechs or payments providers, anyone can do really when it comes to that dissatisfaction with innovation? What's it going to take to
Well, look,
that satisfaction metric?
I think the SME case is a well chosen case. So you and I have been going to conferences for God knows how many years, where someone has stood up and said the SME market is underserved, it's ripe for disruption, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yet, I think in the UK, I don't have the figures in front of me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Lloyd's is still the biggest small business bank in the UK by some margin. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Now, you could say, well, that's because all of the services are equally rubbish. If you're an SME, what's the point of changing from one bank to another bank? Because it's exactly the same. You're not, and that's a sort of reasonable point. I mean, as an SME myself,
Yeah.
I still have the same bank I had when I started the company, and honestly, I don't have the mental energy to change it. I mean, we'll
It's
come
just
back
a
to this.
headache, right?
We'll
Yeah.
come back to this a bit later on.
Yeah.
But it's an important focus area for two reasons. First, because SMEs are very, very poor users of financial services. So I mean, for a typical little SME, a tradie who's got a couple of people working for him on a plumbing business or something like that, will be funding stuff off of credit cards. He won't be using loans and business financing properly. He probably doesn't have much time to set aside to look at planning and working out, schedules of payments and how to manage overdrafts properly and all that sort of thing. So they're very poor users of financial services, and that could be improved significantly.
Mm-hmm. Do you
The
think,
second
just
thing,
quickly on that, do you think that's to do with more support from their SME provider?
actually, that's
Like,
a
how
really
could that be improved?
yeah, that's an interesting question, Claire, because I probably used to think that,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure I think that anymore. So in other words, to put it very, boldly, is it worth trying to educate the tradie how to use a business loan instead of credit cards, and how to manage the checks you pay out so your overdrafts don't run over, and blah blah blah. Is it worth doing that, or should you just give up and get a bot to do it instead? And as time moves on, I'm tending more towards the latter argument. So I used to think, well, look, by offering better, and I have actually, I was an advisor to a company that actually took over an SME bank, so I do know a little bit about the dynamics of the whole thing. And so the idea, we'll do a little, we'll do some nudging, and we'll help them to manage their money a little bit better. The guy's too busy. He's out. He's not interested in this sort of thing.
It's not the priority, is it? The priority is
It's
getting
not,
work, getting it done.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
so busy.
Now, when it comes to payments, I think the crucial, and I think this is where I think the Australian market is particularly interesting. You see the incredible rise in authorized push payment fraud, email redirection fraud. I mean, a lot of these things are targeted against small businesses. You're running a small business, you get a phone call, hi, this is National Australia Bank. It looks like there might have been some fraud on your account. Can you just confirm, blah, 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 and you read the stories in the paper every day of people.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if really in the SME market, and then later in the big business market, the real solution is not the payments layer, it's the next layer up. It's what we really need is absolutely standardized request to pay services, absolutely standardized what we call variable recurring payment services. So the tradie doesn't send you his BSB number and his bank, and then you type it in and send him the money. He goes to his bank, fintech, PSP service. He generates a request to pay. That request to pay shows up on your device, assuming that all the digital signatures are correct and the certificates in place, and all the things that you and I are never going to think about, and nor is the tradie, but the banks can make sure it really
it's totally
is
secure.
So and then I respond to the request to pay, go ahead and pay him, and then you can do the bank transfer and stuff like that. So I'm starting to think that actually this might sound kind of like an extreme way of doing it, but one of the ways to crack down on the massive increases in fraud is simply to stop people from sending money to each other, and just insist they respond to request to pay. So
that certainly would be,
yes, SMEs are a focus.
That would take a lot of those, fraudulent activities, and and that can cripple an SME.
It can, and actually they I was talking to somebody the other day about, there's a particular rash of fraud here, which is to do with real estate and because the criminals will monitor the accounts of lawyers, and then when the lawyer sends you a message that says, okay, we can go ahead with the house purchase, you need to transfer the money to this account, that's when the criminals change the email address. That's
happening in Australia too. It's reported on frequently in the media, hearing a couple losing their entire deposit, and by the way, it's really hard to buy a house in Australia at the moment anyway, so it's just awful. I have to say, my husband and I recently bought a house, actually, which was wonderful, but the efforts and lengths we went to, we literally sat in our mortgage broker's office and watched that money kind of wire happen, and I just wanted them to just 100% basically do it with me, literally sitting in the room, because if that went the wrong way to the wrong person, there goes literally our life savings and our home for our family. It's interesting that's happening in the UK as well. So
that I think that's a well chosen example, the SME example, Chloe. And I think what your data suggests is that despite all of these years of fintechs and blah blah blah, there's still a massive market there. It's not served.
You mentioned a little bit then, which I really want to touch on, and that's moving into the AI space and how AI can perhaps assist here, especially in that SME market. Our research, again, another stat here shows that 80% of SMEs that we speak to, and we, we do our research with, say that they are happy for human interaction to be with their payments provider to be replaced completely by AI. Klarna, the guys at Klarna really well. I've interviewed Sebastian numerous times, but they've recently announced using AI to successfully replace 7,000 service agents, which, I mean, that sucks for them. But that resulted in the customer inquiries being reduced from, they say, 11 minutes down to 2 minutes, and also increased their profitability by 40 million. So I'm sure they're pretty happy about that. What do you think about that? What do you think about AI coming in to perhaps remove some of those pain points and dissatisfaction in that SME space? Do you think we'll see more of it? I know you and Brett King were speaking about that at the company directors meeting you were at presenting at in London last week.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that video. I watched it just before I came on to interview you, actually.
Well, look, I think the key point there, I mean, but bearing in mind, the AI hype is in full swing. I mean, we all understand that. We're all,
yeah.
So you have to kind of disentangle a bit from we're all going to be replaced by robots.
Yeah. Hope not.
Which I think is not obviously true, I have to say.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But I think there's two different things going on here. So there's, if you like, there's the AI evolution in banking, and there's the AI revolution in banking. Yeah. So what you're talking about there with people like Klarna and so on, and if you take AI and you use it to take some people out of the call center, reduce time. I keep reading stuff about banks using AI to do better credit calculations and things like that, which is honestly, literally one of the most boring things you could possibly do with a new technology. I mean, why? But the thing is, none of these are interesting. All of these are banks doing what they do now, but in a slightly more efficient way. So that's great. Not going to change the world.
Yeah.
I think what's not taken into account is not what happens when banks get AI, but what happens when consumers get AI. Because Google and Facebook and everybody is going crazy building AI stuff and putting it into the hands of consumers, that's where you see the revolution.
Yeah.
So if you're a bank, you're used to dealing with a human, like how to deal with customers, theoretically at least. You have departments that know about how to market to customers and get you like if you're in a bank and someone says, oh, market research says we can do a green savings account, and I mean, whether that's true or not, I don't know, use that as an example. You go to the marketing people and they can tell you, they've got years of experience, they've got spreadsheets and models, and they'll tell you, well, if you want 5% of the Australian savings market in 5 years' time, we need to have this much above the line spend, this much below this. You've got to spend this much on incentives, that much. They know exactly how to do this.
Yeah.
But as a customer, I really don't want to do that. I have to do it this weekend because of the way the UK tax year works, and I have to sit down and work out which we have beneficial savings accounts called ISAs.
Yeah.
And I have to try. Yeah, so I've got to try and work out which ISA to get this year and and I really don't want to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I really just think, like, why isn't a bot doing this for me? Like, this is so
like
as
a bot from your bank who knows everything about you?
Well, that's an interesting question, because do I want a bot from my bank? I mean, thanks to open banking, any bot can go to my bank. My very good friend Mike Kelly built a thing called Bank GPT. So he built a Chat GPT plugin that used the UK open banking APIs to access bank accounts. And it took him a morning. It's not that hard to use open banking to connect up. So would I want my bank bot? That's an I would certainly want a regulated bot.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I certainly need to know that for the bot to have access to my bank account, it needs to be regulated.
Absolutely.
Does it need to be from the bank? I don't know. Does it need to be from a consumer association? Does it need to be?
Do you think your comfort levels, because of who you are and the world you work in and everything do you think that your comfort levels are probably, I would say, higher than the everyday person who thinks, I don't want anyone who isn't my bank knowing? I mean, that goes into the whole open banking conversation, but
I mean, I'm not sure people do think that. I mean, insofar as people think anything about it, which is not a lot,
Yeah.
I think there's the danger is the other way around, that a lot of people would take the Kim Kardashian bot and let it access.
Oh
You know what
God,
I
you
mean?
think so? You're probably right. That's so
But in the
scary.
UK, you have this, you have the Financial Conduct Authority, you have this thing called
Yeah.
duty of care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to get into it now, but I think that you can make interesting arguments as to why it's actually easier to make a bot that implements duty of care rules than it is to try and get people to comply with it.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking a little bit further downstream,
Mm-hmm.
the real AI revolution in banking is robot customers, not robot bankers.
Yeah.
And this opens up this world of, and I quite like the phrase. I didn't invent it, but Kathy Hackle, as far as I know, invented it. But this thing about moving from B, we had B to B to C and
Mm-hmm.
B to C. We're moving into B to R to C, business to robot to consumer.
Oh, okay.
And ask yourself this, like if your bot is choosing a savings account or, whatever, the bot doesn't care that your bank sponsored the footy.
Yeah.
The bot doesn't care you have a lovely logo.
Yeah.
The bot doesn't care about those clever adverts on TV.
Mm.
The bot doesn't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah. It's actually just looking for the best product that matches your
Well, if it is
financial
just looking for
needs.
the best price,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, that is seriously bad news for the banks, because that is a direct attack on retail bank profit pools, a
Yeah.
direct attack. And
Yeah.
I just said to you, I probably could get a better rate on some of my savings.
Yeah.
I'm too busy. You're looking after kids. Do you really want to set aside 4 hours to sit down with your old man and go through, oh, if we moved it from the Westpac Direct Super Savings account to
Yeah.
the CBA alternate Wednesday, only withdraw once every 4 months savings account,
Mm-hmm.
we could get another 0.2%. No, you're not going to do that.
No, but I probably would like a, to your point, unbiased bot. So
Well,
not
if
a
a bot
bot
was,
from
a
my
bot could,
bank to say this is the best product for you at the best price on your insurance, your mortgage, your savings, your kids' savings, your life savings, your
well,
retirement.
what would an unbiased, like if like I get an unbiased bot from my bank, and the unbiased bot, and the first thing the unbiased bot does is say, wow, this savings account sucks, I'm moving to another bank. I mean, that doesn't,
But that's
I'm
what I
not
mean.
sure.
So it can't be. That's what I was. That's sorry. That was the point I was
Well,
making.
it
Was
might
it
be,
can't
it
be
might
from your
be,
bank.
but on the other hand, you could argue, and by the way, I'm not smart enough to know which way this is going to pan out, not by a long way,
Yeah.
but you could argue that's actually an opportunity for a bank, because if
Yeah,
a
for
bank
sure.
did make a bot, if the bank bot did tell you, actually, you should move your savings from my bank to another bank,
Well, they're never going
when
to
the
correct
bot comes
that.
back to you in a couple of weeks' time and says, by the way, I think I found a better pension plan for you, then
Yeah.
maybe you'd trust it more,
Yeah,
So,
maybe you would, but the bank's not going to create that because that's going to cannibalize their
but that's
own customers potentially.
that's to the exciting and interesting point, Chloe. You say the bank's
Mm,
not going to create that, but what are they going to create?
mm,
What,
yeah,
you already have these. I mean, I think it's funny. You already have these bots people do that can fight parking tickets for you and stuff like that. I mean,
yeah.
there are bots that can argue with your cable company to reduce your cable bill
Oh my
and
God,
stuff.
I didn't actually know that. Okay.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I think it's really exciting and really interesting, but it's not really about what banks are going to do with AI.
Yeah. Are there bots that can help put little children to bed?
So that's a long way further. I would
You can
I
see
would
which
probably
phase of life I'm at the moment, Dave. Look, listen, let's move on from the bots just quickly because I can't take up too much more of your time.
I tell
I
you what
pretty
though,
much,
the bots
yeah,
wouldn't get bored reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 1000th time.
yeah.
So
That
there
is
are
a good
plus.
book though.
It is a good book.
I love that one. I knew that we'd have a fun chat. I want to talk to you a little bit about fraud in payments, in P2P payments. I know you touched on that a little bit in your book. We see that fraud is obviously increasing when it comes to money transfer significantly across markets and in frequency. It's happening a lot, unfortunately. There are new regulations coming out in the UK where the liability is going to shift on that, and we just wondered if you could provide your view on the impact that that's going to have and
Well, look,
effect on new
normally
players.
I'm the first person to slate banks for being useless at stuff, but I got to say on this, I
Yeah,
am 100% in agreement with the UK banks. The UK banks, I mean, whether they would say it in public or not, the UK banks' perspective on this is ludicrous. So
yeah,
so the what, and I have actually it's on my other machine, but I have an example I was just looking at yesterday for another project I'm involved in.
Yeah.
So guy tries to send, in this case, £125,000. And the bank neural network fraud supercomputer quantum in the cloud blockchain says, no, that's a fraud, and blocks it.
Right.
So the guy phones his bank and says, why haven't you sent this money? And they say it's a fraud. And the guy says, no, you have to send the money. And the bank says, no, it's a fraud. You have to come into the branch to discuss it. So they physically call the guy into a physical branch and tell him to his face, this is a fraud, don't send the money. And the guy says, nope, it's my money. You can't tell me what to do with my money. She really loves me. You have to send the money. Okay. They send the money. Of course, it's a fraud. The bank has to repay £125,000 under what's called the contingent reimbursement model.
What?
Even though the bank, in my opinion, did absolutely nothing wrong.
Well, they did everything they could.
They did. And that still doesn't meet the FCA's bar for how to.
What else could have they done? There's nothing else.
Exactly. But also the banks are saying, hold on a second.
It's his money.
Why are we paying this? This is all to do with Instagram, and this has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
This is fake accounts on Instagram and fake pictures, and why aren't they paying for it? And by the way, when you sent the text messages he got, the numbers were spoofed. Why isn't the telco paying for that? Why are we paying for all of this? And they've got a point. So I don't think the way, and now the current thinking about it is now, starting in October, the banks will be allowed to delay instant payments by 72 hours if they suspect they're fraudulent. I absolutely predict it will make no difference to the fraud. You delay it for 72 hours, the guy will still come in the branch and say, no, she really does love me, send her the money. Because that's how frauds work, you know? That's so our approach to it, I think, is come to the asymptotic end. I mean, fraud is out of control. Nothing much is being done about it. I say nothing much is being done about it. It's the number one most reported crime in the UK. And I just looked at the national crime audit figures because and they say it's underreported. It's the number one most reported crime.
Yeah.
The National Crime Agency say it's underreported.
Yeah.
If you look at the figures from Barclays, TSB, Lloyds, they all say the same thing. 80–90% of these frauds all come from the same place, which is Meta, because the frauds either come from Facebook Marketplace or they come from WhatsApp or Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, why aren't you making those guys do something about it? And I agree. I'm sympathetic.
Is there more to happen on that? I mean, you're better across that than I am, but is there more to come on that? Are they going to kind of fight back with that and say, you know, take it to the FCA and take it up and up and up and say why aren't
I think
involved?
I think something's going to have to give in that space. The new arrangement that you're talking about, which is the split contingent reimbursement model, basically just means if I get an email that says, hello, I'm a deceased African prince. I was in a car crash shortly after I won the Spanish lottery. You're my last living relative. And if you send the money to if you send the lawyer's fee of $10,000, we'll send you back $10 million. If you get an email like that, you may as well send him the $10,000. You may as well. It's a one-way bet. You know, there's a 1 in a billion chance he really is a deceased African prince who was killed in a car crash shortly after he won the Spanish lottery, and you'll get $10 million. And if he's not, the bank has to give you the money back. And the arrangement you're talking about is the split reimbursement. So basically, my bank has to give me half the money back, and the payee bank has to give me half the money back.
Yeah.
The payer bank has to give me half the money back. Now, you might reasonably say in the UK, as in Australia, hold on a second, bank accounts are only given to people under very stringent KYC, AML, you know. So if I send the money to a CBA account, then either CBA knows who that person is, in which case the police can go and arrest them, or CBA doesn't know who the person is, in which case the police can go and arrest the compliance officer at CBA.
Yeah.
Like if I send money through instant payments, it can only go to an Aussie bank account, right? So you think, therefore, honest to God, there aren't enough policemen in the world. There aren't enough policemen in the world to deal with that. So as a consequence, nothing happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a tough place. It's a tough place for the banks to be in, really, isn't
Well,
it? You can't miss a trick.
you'll be sick of hearing me say it, Chloe, because it won't be the first time. But if we want to do anything about it, we have to do something about digital identity. I mean, this is the,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, well, you and Brett were chatting about that, weren't you? Saying, how our wallets really, I thought it was really interesting in that conversation, how our wallets, there's no money in our wallets. It's just
no, it's
or,
not.
in my purse, it's just my ID, my reputation, my brand, who I am. And that's just going to increase, more.
All of which is more important. There's
Yeah.
I'm just writing a piece today for something. Because it happens that a few months ago, my iPhone was stolen from a coffee shop in London.
Oh,
And I just read another article by somebody who stole it. And the thing is, this is my entire identity. It's my access to all of my money, all of my bankers, all this kind of thing. If you stole my wallet, I couldn't care less, honestly. I
yeah,
mean,
there's less in there. You're
it's
right.
a hassle, but you know what? If you steal my wallet, I'll cancel the cards.
Yeah.
You know, I'll get a new driving license. There's no money in the wallet anyway.
Yeah.
And if you look at the figures in London, mobile phones have overtaken credit cards and cash as the most stolen item
Oh
from
yeah, I'm
people.
not surprised. I mean, there's
So this,
so much more in your phone, and
yeah.
it's all
So
there.
safeguarding your digital identity is much more important than safeguarding your money. And
Yeah.
really,
Also, if your wallet's stolen, you just go onto your phone and you quickly pause your cards,
yeah,
or
exactly.
you lose
Yeah.
your phone, whatever. But if your phone gets taken, you're going quick. Where's my bank? I've got to walk in and say, stop the cards. Like, where are we
Well,
going to
I
hold
mean,
them?
this is kind of the point of the article I'm writing. I mean, I was lucky because my phone was stolen from a coffee shop and I was there in a business meeting.
Mm.
So I said to the guy I was meeting, I ran out, couldn't catch the woman. So I just borrowed the guy's laptop,
Yeah.
logged
Oh,
into
and you
my,
logged on.
yeah, I logged into my iCloud, wiped the phone, blocked all
Oh,
the
well done.
accounts.
That's smart. But I mean,
So it
not many
wasn't,
people would be in that situation
no,
losing a
exactly.
phone. Like, you
So,
lose a phone out at a party or in a park or going for a walk or whatever. I mean, not everyone's got a laptop right there that they can then remember all their details, log on and shut everything off. So it
well, I
can
was
happen
reading
so quickly.
this thing about shoulder surfing as well. So, you're in a bar, you're using your phone to pay. So you unlock your phone
Oh
with the
yeah.
pin, and there's someone looking over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then half an hour later, you leave the bar and they have an accomplice attack you and get the phone at that point because they know the pin.
Oh, brutal.
So I think, this stuff is fascinatingly interesting to
Yeah,
me.
it is.
So figuring out how to manage and look after and safeguard people's digital identities, I think really is at the core of
Yeah.
all of it. And by the way, that
Which,
extends to the AIs as well,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm going to give an AI permission to access my bank account. How do you, the bank, know that it was me and I gave permission to that AI? You're back in the world of keys and certificates and all these kind
Yeah.
of things. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with that.
But no, I know you're obsessed with digital identity, and I think it's a great thing to be obsessed with. You make so many good points. We're going to wrap it up,
Oh
and
yeah, sure.
it's a good place to wrap it up because I know that's a lot about that's in the book. Money in the Metaverse. You co-wrote it with Victoria Richardson,
Yeah.
wonderfully impressive business person. I adore her. She's fabulous. Tell me about the co-writing process just quickly and how it's all going with the
Oh,
book.
I'm definitely going to do it again. Well, in summary, it was wonderful because what happened, Chloe, was I'd I it goes back to a book. So I was invited to a book launch, not my book, but I was invited to a book launch in the metaverse, and it was really fun and enjoyable. And we were all in the metaverse chatting to people I hadn't seen for a while. Well, I mean, chatting to their avatars, and that like they were chatting to my avatar,
Awesome.
which is much slimmer, I have to say, than in avatars. They've got a lot to be said for
Oh
them.
yeah, I've got some pretty good avatars out there of me actually, where I'm some
So
sort of ninja person. It's great.
yeah, so it was fun. But when it came to actually buying the book, there was no way of buying the book in the metaverse. You had to basically come out into like a 2D space, scan a barcode, go to a website, type in your card details. And I was just left thinking, wait, that can't be right. That's just not how things are going to work
Mm.
in the sort of future world we're marching towards. And at that point, everyone had mucked about with the Facebook glasses and decided, oh, well, this isn't that great. So therefore, we're not bothered. The metaverse. And I just took completely the opposite message. I was just, okay, this isn't great. but then, you know, the Apple Newton wasn't great. You know, it's just a step that shows you where things are going. It's not the,
Yeah.
so I got more in, and the more people I spoke to, the more I read about the metaverse, the more I started to look at how transactions would work. That started taking me towards Web3 and tokenization and decentralized finance. And of course, then that brought in digital identity. If you're going to do business with people in the metaverse, how do you know who you're doing business with, and blah, blah, blah. And as I started to work through this, I began to realize that digital wallets were going to be the core of all of this. Like, it's the digital wallet that's going to be the pivot into the metaverse. And of course, and I know a little bit about digital wallets, but Victoria knows a lot about them. So I started talking to Victoria about it. And of course, as soon as she made the first few points about how I could think about this in a slightly different way, I was like, oh my God, of course, you know, because she's an outstanding digital strategist, and you know, the ability to synthesize some of these things. So I said to her, well, look, how would you feel about writing the book together? And that turned out to be a truly wonderful experience, because the truth is, you know, you do see things in a slightly different way. And you know, and of course, because of the time differences as well, because she's in Sydney and I'm in London, you know, I'd work on something and and then I go to bed, and then I wake up and she's said, oh, actually, you should.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
And it'd be the same thing. And then she wakes up and I've said, oh, actually, I think that bit's great, but you should change this a little bit. And because of the tools you have available now, Google Docs and all that sort of thing,
Yeah, that's
it was an absolutely wonderful experience. And and we had a lot of fun. So doing the book launch at Money 2020 Asia in Bangkok was really fun. You know, we did the book signings together, and we did the fireside chat about it. And it was, honestly, I can't recommend it highly enough. If you know someone as smart as Victoria, you should definitely write a book with her.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, I'm so glad. I can't wait to get my signed copy. I need both of you to sign it, so I'll have to
Absolutely.
get it over to London and then get it back to Sydney. But
Well,
listen,
I'm down in Sydney and Melbourne in August, so hopefully we
that's
can.
right. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely connect then. Thank you for joining Banking Uncovered. It was a real delight to talk to you. I knew that we would have a fun time. And yeah, have a great day in sunny London. Spring's coming.
You made it very easy for me, Chloe. It was a lot of fun. See you soon.
Awesome.